Hey everyone, today I'm going to be going over all of the tier 6 bosses as well as some of the trash. At this point we're about 2.5 weeks into tier 6 and I've tanked all of these bosses 2 to 3 times each, usually in the main tank role, some of them in the off tank role, so I'll mostly be speaking about main tanking them. I'm just going to go over things that have worked for me, things that haven't worked for me, and what kind of gear I recommend wearing for each boss. First, I'm going to give you some context. So these are the parses of the DPS in my guild, so that will give you kind of an idea of what I'm working against when I'm talking about what kind of thread I need for things. And these are their current parses for tier 6. Most people haven't really gotten super into parsing this early in the tier though, so this is also their parses for tier 5, just to give you a reference point. This is phase 2. And thread's really not that big of a deal in this tier. We get to use exorcism on a lot of stuff, and that pretty much solves any thread issues you might have. If you are having any thread issues, I recommend just making sure you've really got your rotation locked down, making sure you're pressing all your buttons as soon as you can, because at least in my experience, thread's really not an issue, even in like lower spell power sets. Like when I'm wearing my effective HP set, I never even really feel like I'm in danger of losing thread to anything. I always have a pretty big lead. So if you are having thread issues, I would recommend just making sure like your rotation is really locked down, you're using your full consumes, that kind of stuff. As far as potions go, I really like using Iron Shield potions a lot. In a lot of situations, they're actually, I think, going to be your highest DPS potion because they allow you to swap some gear out. So if you use an Iron Shield pot, you're going to get 2500 extra armor. With that extra armor, you may feel comfortable dropping a couple pieces, maybe even becoming crushable by like 1%, 2%, something like that. And if you can get those 2 extra pieces in, those 2 pieces could potentially be like, let's say 40 spell power and 30 spell hit combined. So that's going to be a lot stronger than just a short haste buff or short spell power buff from Destropod and Haste Pot. If you are in a situation where your survivability is totally fine and you're just trying to, you know, get as much damage as possible, then Haste Pot for single target and Destropod for multi-target is great. And if you are off-tanking stuff, a lot of times you'll run out of mana, so in those situations you will want to use a mana pot, because if you run out of mana you can't do damage. So as long as you have mana, I go Iron Shield, I think it's generally the best, and then Haste Pot, Destropod. As far as talents for this tier, what I'm using right now, I started with 0-40-21 with points into shield spec. There's some flexible points in the 0-40-21 spec, the standard Sancora spec. So I originally put those into shield spec just for progression, take less damage, make sure we don't wipe on anything silly, and we're on limited time, so really important not to wipe, not really worrying about parsing or anything. And like I said, not really having any thread issues. I am now transitioning into 0-40-21 with the extra flex points in Reckoning instead of shield spec. I am getting fairly geared now. I've got my like 4-piece tier 6 and some other pieces as well. So at this point I feel like I don't really need shield spec anymore because I've replaced most of that tier 5 gear that was giving me block value. So the benefit I get from shield spec is a lot lower. So I don't really feel like I need shield specialization anymore. So I'm going with the Reckoning build at this time. And once I get closer to full bis, I'm going to be going the 0-38-23 spec. That's the improved Sancora spec. Currently I'm slotting into like a double Warlock, balanced Druid, Ellie Shaman group, so that's a really awesome spec for that group because you got a lot of DPS you can give your Imp Sancora to. But since I am main tanking, I don't want to quite give up that extra stamina from combat expertise quite yet. So this will be something I'm waiting a little bit longer to go into. But for now, I'm running with the 04021 Reckoning spec. As far as like threat gear and parsing and stuff like that goes, as I said before, you really don't need that much extra threat in this tier. Threat's pretty easy to get. So if you are going for like threat pieces in certain fights, you're mostly just doing it for parsing and just adding a small amount of extra raid DPS. But this is going to be a really long tier, and at the time I'm making this video, already 72% of guilds worldwide have fully cleared it. So I think this tier is going to get pretty stale pretty quick. So I recommend checking out Parsing if you're into that, because it's a little extra mini game you can play that'll keep you interested in the tier a little bit longer. When everything's so easy, like it's nice to just have some little thing you can, you know, be playing around with to make the tier more fun when like most of us have already cleared this tier and we're going to be just repeat clearing it for the next 4 months. Alright, so let's just hop into the Hyjal Trash. So high block value gear is really strong for this. If you're just starting out in Hyjal, like the tier 5 gear is super good for this. A lot of it has like block value, block rating. It's fantastic gear for this. And once you get 4-piece tier 6, you can just replace all that tier 5, no problem. The extra consecration damage is huge. That'll be great for your threat. And obviously the gear has like more armor on it, and you do trade the block value and block rating for dodge, but it's not too big of a deal. And really you just want that consecration bonus. The Tome of the Lightbringer is huge for this trash. Once you get that off Mother Shahraz, it's going to make Hyjal Trash a complete joke. You're not really going to take like any damage, and you can go a lot more aggressive with some of your gear. Go for a lot more spell power. Arcane Bombs, I've said this before, but in case anybody's new, Arcane Bombs are amazing for this trash. Any heavy caster pack, like normally like 6+ casters, I try to have some people in our raid throw some Arcane Bombs to keep me alive. And free action potions are also a must-have for this trash. I'm able to just tank everything on A-bomb waves with a free action potion. This could vary depending on your healers, and for me, I have no problem with it. I have heard other people do have some issues staying alive when they're tanking everything on A-bomb waves, but if your FAP's up, I would just say tank the entire wave yourself. And Stratholme Holy Water is really great for Hyjal Trash too. It's gonna just let you get immediate huge threat. It benefits from Righteous Fury, so it's great for threat. And when your FAP is down, just have one of your other tanks. In my guild, we actually only run one other tank. The only 2 tanks are me and a Feral Druid, but and for anything where 3 tanks are needed, we just have a Fury Warrior wearing proc gear, basically. So for those waves, just have your other tank pick up as many A-bombs as they can, and they'll use a free action pod on that one. And some waves, there will be A-bombs like right before a boss. If it's a boss you're main tanking, I recommend just using an Iron Shield pot on those waves so that you have that for the boss as well, because otherwise the cooldown can interfere with what you'll have available for the boss. So if that's the case, I would have your other tank try to pick up as many A-bombs as they can, and you'll just have the Iron Shield pot up. You will be super tanky with the Iron Shield pot, so even if you do get stunned by like 1 or 2 A-bombs that are on you, then you'll probably be fine. It really just depends on your healers. First boss, Rage Winterchill, super easy. For this boss, if you want to, you can wear just an uncrittable set. You don't need to be uncrushable. He can Ice Bolt the tank, so that's something to watch for. You're gonna have Forbearance from your Avenging Wrath for the first minute, but after that you can bubble and cancel to get out of Ice Bolt. You can use a PvP trinket if you want, but I don't think it's really worth it. The probability of you getting an Ice Bolt in the first minute before your Forbearance is off is pretty low, and I don't really like to gear for like low probability situations. So I would say just don't use the PvP trinket, but if your healers like have issues keeping you up for whatever reason, then maybe that's something you might need to do in your guild. Next, Anetheron. On this fight, this is one of the few fights I don't main tank. I tank the Infernals. Prot Paladin is a really awesome choice for Infernal tanking, just because we have Exorcism, really easy with Exorcism and Judgment to pick up the Infernals. And we can just kind of stay away, not get stunned like some other tanks might, by trying to get up close to be able to pick them up. So to be safe, you can tank the Infernals like off to the side, away, kind of like by Jaina or something. What I do, because this fight's super easy for us, I just literally like tank the Infernal next to Anetheron just to get a little extra consecration DPS, make it go slightly faster. So that's something you can do if you want to. Great for parsing too if you're into that. Your threat really isn't going to matter too much on the Infernals, because, well, most guilds opt to not kill the Infernals and just tank them to the side. So as long as your guild's not killing the Infernals, your threat really doesn't matter on them, so you can kind of just wear whatever you want. If you wear Fire Res gear, it's going to make it pretty much impossible for you to die to the Infernals. They're level 72, so you just need 5.4% uncrittable, and then wear as much FR as you want. In my guild, we're just barely getting a second Infernal right now, so I'm probably actually just going to stop wearing Fire Res. But if you want to play it safe, just wear lots of Fire Res and be uncrittable. Next, let's look at Kazrogal. So for Kazrogal, you have some options on your potion here. You can either go Iron Shield Pot or Free Action Pot. He does a War Stomp, so if you Free Action Pot, if you time it right, and he does his casts like within a reasonable time frame, you'll probably avoid 2 stuns with a FAP. So FAP's kind of an interesting choice for that reason. And he can sometimes use his War Stomp so fast that it'll actually DR, and then like eventually you'll become immune to it anyway. So there's a little bit of an RNG game there with whether or not you want to guarantee you don't take the first 2 stuns with the FAP, or kind of hope that he DRs his stun and then you don't sit in it for too long. So I normally just go Iron Shield Pot on this. I think it's a little bit safer. You can soak his cleave on this fight. His cleave is kind of weird in that it splits the damage between everybody hit. In my guild, we don't split the cleave. I don't have any cleave soaker, so I'm taking the full cleave every time. So I just go for the Iron Shield Pot just to reduce the chance that I get gibbed, because the cleave, I think it hits for about like 8k, and then his normal attack is maybe like 5-6k, something like that. So if you get a parry haze, like it could potentially gib you. So I just go with the Iron Shield Pot, reduce the damage a bit. For this fight, you can just use a Uncrushed Threat Set. That's totally fine. And the mana debuff is never an issue when you're main tanking this. If you're off tanking it, then you're definitely going to want to be like bubble canceling the mana drain debuff at some point. You're going to want to like use mana pots, whatever you can do to not run out of mana. And as a main tank, you can also bubble cancel one of the stuns if you want. Now let's look at Azgalor. So for this fight, it's good to wear a high effective HP set. That's going to be a set that has lots of stam and armor. If your avoidance capped, you can also include block value in that. I don't really aim for avoidance cap for Azgalor because he can't crush, so I'm not going to include block value in that, but I tend to wear like Gilded Thorium Cloak, the Violet Signet, Royal Seal of Azgalor, like extra armor stuff is really nice. If you have, there's a few really good effective HP pieces like Praetorian Legs from Black Temple, Glory of the Defender. I think it actually drops off Azgalor, so you will have had to have already killed him if you have that. But yeah, just pieces that have like dodge, parry, stam armor. Those are great for surviving on this fight. He's gonna silence your healers constantly, so it's really nice to be really tanky for this, so you don't die while your healers are silenced. And speaking of the silence, I also like to use the Pendant of the Lost Ages for this fight. It's the Morgrim neck. It reduces your silence duration by 20%, so that's pretty helpful, so you can use your abilities more. And he's also gonna Rain of Fire around himself a lot, so you want to kind of move him. Don't move him like too much, but try to just move him just enough so that there's plenty of room for the melee to get out of Rain of Fire and still DPS. And he may cast it near you too, so you might just have to move out of the way of that too. Everybody in your raid needs to kind of make sure they're not in the vicinity of cleave for this. His cleave is a full 180. If you are like anywhere near his midsection, you can potentially get cleaved. So your melee gotta be really careful and just kind of communicate with them while you're moving him. And these should, again, just be really small movements. You can also just change the way he's facing sometimes. That can help. If you're an off tank for this fight, I did off tank this 1 week. It's honestly pretty boring. You will get 1, maybe 2 Doom Guards, and they just cast like Cripple and War Stomp, and honestly, they don't do a whole lot. If you want to, you can just tank them right next to Azgalor and consecrate them if you want, or you can tank them far away and have the Tauren Warriors kill them. It is a really easy boss, so it doesn't matter too much as an off tank. Main tanking though, definitely a lot more involved. You need to have really tanky gear for that, because if you die, then you gotta clear all that Hyjal Trash. That really sucks. So I would just wear a very high survivability set. Don't take any risks on this. It's not necessary. Everybody's gonna hate you if you wear like some really thready set just to try to parse, and you end up dying and everybody has to re-clear the Azgalor Trash. So go tanky for that one. For Archimonde, you're also going to want a high effective HP set. Only real difference for Archimonde versus Azgalor for gearing, I just swap out the neck. I wear Darkener's Grasp instead of the Pendant of the Lost Ages, since Archimonde can silence, but it's based on soul charge, so hopefully nobody dies. I try not to plan for people dying, so I don't wear the Pendant of the Lost Ages for that one. For damage, Archimonde does hit hard, but it's really not too big of a deal as long as like your healers aren't getting full feared. Like they should all be by Tremor Totem, so they should not really be CC'd too much. It will obviously still like cancel a heal they have coming, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And they can also get air bursted, so if they're too close together, a couple of them get air bursted, that could be a little dangerous. You can also have a Holy Pally Imp lay on hands you. This will give you 30% more armor. This will make you pretty much unkillable on this fight. And you can also do this on Azgalor as well. And when you get that Imp LOH, you take so little damage, it's actually kind of a joke. But the other dangerous thing is like when Soul Charge goes off and all the healers get silenced, that can be a problem. Before the pull, you're going to want to get a Fear Ward. In my guild, we run 2 priests, so I have one priest fear ward me, and then we wait like a minute and a half so their cooldown's mostly back up. And then Archimonde fears me, takes the first fear ward. Our second priest then fear wards me, and then by the time that fear ward gets used up, then the first priest who did it pre-pull, his is back up. So then I get a third fear ward there, and so by this point, we've gone through 3 fear wards, and Archimonde, I think, is around like 40% usually at that point. So then I just rely on Tremor Totem basically to get me out of the next fear. You can also just bubble cancel in case you don't want to mess around with like unlucky tremor ticks and stuff like that. This is honestly not too bad of a fight. As long as you just have a really good effective HP set, you can tank it no problem as a Prot Paladin. He also won't crush, so you can kind of drop your block if you want, go for a more dodge parry heavy set. Extra armor is great, extra stam. Let's move on to Black Temple now. So couple trash packs to talk about. So there's one before Najentus people often have trouble with. Honestly, I didn't even realize people had trouble with this because I was just running in and YOLO tanking it the first like 2 weeks, but then this week we had like some different healers and I tried running in and YOLO tanking it and I just got smashed. So we had to be a little more strategic with it. We like brought the generals away from the pack. They can like remove CC on the other guys in the pack. So we brought those away and then we banished the elemental, and that made it a lot easier. Since the elemental does quite a bit of damage, since your armor doesn't affect how much damage he does. So if you're having any trouble on that, if you want to try YOLO tanking it, I would just wear really tanky gear for that. And if you can't YOLO tank it, just move the have one tank move the generals away, and then probably you will be the one staying there and tanking everything else, and just banish the elemental. Should be fine. Bone Chewer Blade Furies are another one some people have some trouble with. I know I definitely find them very frustrating. So these are part of the packs that are on the way to Reliquary of Souls and Gurtogg. These guys are like the dual axe guys that will just like drop threat constantly. They are stunnable when they don't have their buff up. When they have their buff up, they can't be stunned and they'll like drop threat. So I like to just focus fire these down, get them done with as soon as possible, because they can just wreak havoc if you leave them up too long. So just drop a Hodge on one, have your rogue stun also, and try to get these down as quick as possible. And make sure your casters are just far away. They're probably going to be the ones pulling aggro on these. So make sure they're far away, and you can bop them too to make it through the buff part. Let's talk about the bosses now. So for Najentus, I just wear like an uncrushed threat set for this. You can probably get away with an uncrittable set, but I haven't really played around with that yet. Again, like anything else, the sets you wear, it's gonna kind of depend on your healers what you can get away with, and also it's mostly for parses and extra damage you're bringing to the table, and that's a very small amount of damage also as a Prot Paladin. So if you have any like worry about dying to anything, just wear like a tanky set and then slowly peel pieces off week to week as you keep doing these bosses, and that'll give you a really good idea like where to land with your gearing for each boss. But for Najentus, I'm pretty comfortable getting away with just an uncrushed threat set. The only really scary part about this fight is when his bubble pops does 8,500 damage. You can resist it though, so if you get a full resist on that, that's pretty awesome. And that's really the only time you can die, is if you take like a couple hits and the bubble pops, but your healers should be on top of that, so it shouldn't really be an issue. For Supremus, I've been main tanking this, and our Feral Druid absorbs the Hateful Strikes. The key on this is making sure the off tank is getting healed up really quick so that none of the melee take any of the Hateful Strikes, because it is HP based as well as threat based. So just make sure that off tank's getting healed up super quick. Make sure they're really close to him too. I have heard of like some range issues where the off tank thought they were close enough, but they actually weren't, and then melee took a hateful. But the main key is keeping their HP above that of the melee. In phase 2, when he's in like his kite phase, you can actually just do a lot of threat to him, because he just gives like a static amount of threat. It's pretty small, I think it's like 10k to whoever he chooses for like his gaze. So you can just threat through that and just have the person who's been gazed not threat, and you'll be able to pick him back up no problem. And by doing that, you can just keep him standing still and everybody can DPS him no problem. So that's pretty awesome. Just have both tanks just fighting for threat on there. It doesn't really matter who gets it. For Shade of Akama, I would just wear like a high spell power set just so you can get threat on the ads really easily. And have some like frost traps and earthbind totems down as well, kind of around the stairs area. That's pretty helpful, I've found. You can also bring some of the trash pack from before Shade into the fight, and that'll let your warlocks just start using Seed of Corruption right away, get some extra damage in on the channelers. Really easy fight. It's like a 1 minute fight, so that's a pretty simple one. For Teron Gorefiend, he technically hits hard, but he doesn't do too much else on top of that, so it's actually not very dangerous even though he hits pretty hard. So I would just wear like an uncrushed threat set for this. For a lot of guilds, this is almost like kind of the patchwork fight of the tier. You kind of just pump as hard as you can, as fast as you can, and it's a pretty easy fight when you got 25 people. Alright, so for Reliquary of Souls, phase 1, you can use a high block value set and just tank him the entire time if you want, but I wouldn't recommend this if you're main tanking phase 2 and 3. This would just be if like you're gonna be an off tank in this fight anyway. You can make it easier by just wearing a super high block value set and just tanking him the entire phase 1 pretty much. If you are gonna be main tanking, what we do in my guild, we have our Feral Druid start on him first. Once our Feral gets to like 35 to 40% HP, I start to try to pick him up. And then I tank him to like 35-40%. Then we have 2 rogues in our guild, and then one of them goes in, evasion tanks him, and I don't think we've ever reached the point where we needed the second rogue, but second rogue is ready to do a second evasion tank if we needed that. So that makes it really easy. If your guild's having any issues with this though, then block value set's something you could consider. That'd make this really easy. For phase 2, if you're main tanking, sometimes DPS will miss kicks, so you might take a deaden or a spirit shock. For these, I would just bubble cancel as soon as you get either one of these, because if you get deadened and then you get spirit shocked, it will just one-shot you. It does like 20k damage or something like that. And if you get spirit shocked, it's gonna make you like disoriented for a little bit, and it's gonna run off and start attacking people. So I would try to get out of that as soon as possible, and possibly right out of that bubble cancel, maybe lay on hands yourself, because you will be pretty low from the spirit shock most likely, but kind of depends on when the heals come in on that. For phase 3, I haven't really had any threat issues on this. I just kind of pop wings, pop everything, and just go crazy. Let's look at Gurtogg next. So Gurtogg, I usually just mostly solo tank this. I say mostly because he has like a knockback that will reduce your threat. You can like dodge and parry and you can miss. So the idea is that I am going to like main tank the whole boss, but when he does the knockback and reduces threat, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you lose too much threat and you just end up not main tanking it, but we always go in with the idea that I will main tank it as long as I can, basically. For this, I wear like an uncrushed threat set, but you can also wear like an uncrushed set with extra dodge and parry in it if you want. This is gonna allow you to avoid some of the debuffs he's gonna put on you, as well as helping you avoid his disorient. He has a disorient that disorients you for, I think it's 10 seconds, might be 8, but that's pretty rough if you get that. And also the knockback, you can dodge and parry that. So I would try to, if you're having any issues, wear extra dodge and parry. Something like Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch, that'll help quite a bit with dodging. So that's a great option. And then when you hit the first Fel Rage, you're probably going to have something like 18 stacks of Acidic Wound. So at that point, you would just bubble cancel to get the debuffs off. That way you're ready to tank again for the next phase. And my guild kills it before there's a third Bloodboil phase. If your guild doesn't kill it before a third Bloodboil phase, you probably will need the other tank to actually tank the third Bloodboil phase, because you'll still have your stacks. So at that point though, you probably will have taken some knockbacks and gotten your threat reduced, so that might just kind of work itself out. But if you need to, you can just like stop threading and let them thread, throw some MDs on them, that kind of thing. And you can bop the Fel Rage target, and Gurtogg will just keep attacking them even though they're immune. So what I do is I just watch for the Fel Rage target to be at 35 to 40% HP, then I just hit my target of target bop macro. I'll have that in the description if you guys need that. And that works pretty well. That gives healers a little breathing room to catch up healing them, so hopefully they can survive the whole Fel Rage phase. And then the red or Holy Pally can bop the next one after that. For Mother Shahraz, she actually just got fixed, so she no longer parry haste, so there's no reason not to attack her as a tank. I off-tank this fight. I think this is one of the fights where it doesn't make a lot of sense for a Prot Paladin to tank. It is a really good idea to have like a Feral Druid as the main tank. So I just soak on this fight. And what kind of gear you're gonna wear for this kind of depends on your guild. If your guild's having any issues on this fight, I would just use like a lot of dodge and parry gear just to reduce how many saber lashes you take. But if your guild is just like cruising through this boss and has like no issues at all, I would just wear as much like spell power and spell hit as you can. Just do some extra damage, because honestly it's a very easy fight once like everybody has it down. So your gear's gonna fall somewhere between super avoidance heavy and super spell hit, spell power heavy, depending on how you want to play it. But all these bosses in this tier die so fast that I think a lot of guilds are pretty quickly going to be transitioning into just killing everything as quick as they possibly can. It's almost going to be like MC days, I think. MC, BWL, just like speed killing everything. Pendant of the Lost Ages is pretty nice for this fight too. She can silence, and it'll take like 2 seconds off the silence every time she casts it, so I would wear that if you have it. Next, let's look at Illidari Council. So in this fight, I tank Varus the Rogue. I think this is a pretty good role for Prot Paladin. We don't have an interrupt, so it doesn't make as much sense, I don't think, for us to tank the Priest. I think Warrior's pretty good for that, but Warrior's also good for the Pally Gathios, because they can spell Reflect the Judgment, which is one of his bigger damaging abilities. So, yeah, so Prot Pally I think is best on the Rogue. The Rogue's gonna vanish every little bit, and he's gonna be gone for quite a while, so you're actually not even tanking anything for like half of this fight. So basically you're just gonna be DPSing during that time, and when he comes back out, he can sometimes have spell warding on him, which is essentially Blessing of Protection but for spells. So if he does have that, call for a misdirection from your hunters, because it's going to be really tough for you to get threat on him. And I would tank him away from everything else while he has spell warding on him, because you're not really going to be able to get threat on him. And melee can very easily pull aggro on him with like Blade Flurry, Sweeping Strikes, Whirlwind, that kind of stuff. But if he doesn't have spell warding, or you've already gotten a lot of threat and then like a spell warding got cast like after you already had threat established, I would just tank him right on top of Gathios the Pally, just so melee can cleave and you can get a lot more damage in that way. But you can also, when he comes out of Vanish, you can make it easy by just telling your hunters to always misdirect you when he comes back out. That way there's no like delay where they're like waiting for communication that you need the misdirection because of the spell warding. But most of them are going to have their misdirect on CD from the pull, so this will be like a couple minutes into the fight that you'll be able to get those like chain MDs from the hunters. But misdirect is great for that, and just watch like your DBM timer, make sure you're watching when he's coming out of Vanish, and just go pick him up, drop a judgment on him. And he is tauntable also, which is great, and you can stun him as well. So those are both great tools. So like if your judgment misses, you can taunt. If that misses, you can just Hodge him and keep him still, drop like a consecration on him just so you can get some threat. And by the time your Hodge is off cooldown, your judgment should be back up. Hopefully that one doesn't miss. So yeah, just Uncrush Threat Set is great for that fight. Lots of Spell Hit I really like to use, just since you're constantly having to re-pick up the Rogue over and over again. You really don't want that judgment to miss. So Uncrush Threat Set, that's what I've been using for this fight. It's pretty good, I think. Alright, so we're finally at Illidan, and for this fight, the most important thing you need is a Shear set. That's for his ability Shear, and if it hits you, it's going to reduce your max HP, and he'll pretty much just instant kill you. Once that hits you, you can bubble cancel that debuff off, but most likely the debuff's going to hit you, then an auto attack's going to hit you, and you're just going to die. But that is something you can try to do if you get lucky on like a dodge or parry. So for a Shear set, you need 101.8% combined dodge, parry, and block. But Illidan hits extremely hard, so you really want as little of that 101.8% to come from block as possible. So try to get as much dodge and parry as you can. His ability Shear cannot miss, so that's why we can't factor miss into this equation. So this set is going to be a lot more avoidance than like your Uncrushable set. It's going to be like 112 to 114% total avoidance. It just kind of depends on what gear you have in the set. And just a note, if you're looking at 7dupgrades.com and like building a set on there, you can mouse over total avoidance and it'll say boss avoidance holy shield in parentheses, and that'll be like your total boss avoidance, but then right below that it'll say boss mischance. You just need to subtract boss mischance from boss avoidance holy shield, and that needs to equal 100% or more for you to be shear capped. And the reason it's 100% and not 101.8% is because for those metrics, they've already taken into account the reductions on avoidance you get from fighting a boss mob. So if you're building a set on there, that's something to keep in mind. A lot of people get kind of tripped up on those numbers. There's a lot of numbers to keep track of, so it's understandable. So try to get as much dodge and parry as possible, and some good items for this are things like Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch. That gives you a use effect also, so that's really strong for like his enrage phase later on. And Scarab of Displacement, another great trinket, gives you lots of defense, but also gives you an on use you can use to use like during his enrage or just sporadically throughout the fight. For progression, I recommend like 18 to 20k HP, probably just go on the higher end, go like 19 to 20 for progression. Once everybody's got like a good feel for the fight, like you have a good feel for it, your healers do, then you can probably go lower than that. He used to be kind of bugged with his enrage ability, and he would do it sooner than he was supposed to. So in the early stages of the tier, people needed to gear a lot more defensively because they might take an extra enrage a lot quicker. But now that that's been fixed, you can go a little bit more lax on your survivability. But for progression, I definitely recommend going higher on the survivability just till everybody gets it down, then you can shed a little bit of it. Threat's really not an issue on this fight though, because he attacks so much that you get lots of Holy Shield damage. You can exorcism him as well, so I haven't had any threat issues on this fight. There are some threat resets though, so there is definitely some value in like having a lot more spell hit, just so like you don't get like an exorcism into judgment resist like right on a threat reset. And once you like really like have this fight down, you can probably honestly go like 17k HP. I think that'd probably be fine, but definitely for progression, like 18 to 20k I think is better. And you can go for like extra armor too early on in progression, like Violet Signet, Seal of Danzalar, Gilded Thorium Cloak, those kinds of things. If you can fit those in, the extra armor is pretty huge because he does hit really hard. And you can just spam Holy Shield the whole time. You don't have to worry about him really eating through all the charges and shearing you, because a lot of things need to happen for you to actually take a shear if you're spamming Holy Shield. So first off, he has to land 8 attacks, well, block. You have to block 8 attacks in 10 seconds, and you're gonna have a really high dodge and parry rate in this set, so your chance to block is actually pretty low compared to like a lot of other situations. So the chance of blocking that many times is pretty low to begin with, but then he also like can't have proc to read out on you, so that would cover like your Holy Shield for the most part. And he'd also have to cast the shear, and the shear would have to still land, so that shear would still be going against like all your regular avoidance, which is, you know, gonna be like 70%, something like that. So the chance of all of those things happening is super small. So just spam your Holy Shield, just be really on top of it. So like if Consecration GC or Consecration CD and Holy Shield CD are coming up at like the exact same time, prioritize hitting that Holy Shield, don't hit that Consecration. And yeah, just make sure you have really great uptime on your Holy Shield. Just spam that thing, make sure it's always up. You can have your shaman use Grace of Air Totem for this. I like to do that because it lets me gear a little bit differently, and the extra dodge is really nice, gives you a little bit of extra armor too. But if you're gearing for shear based on Grace of Air Totem, you need to be very confident that your shaman is going to always have that down, because if they have bad totem uptime, then you're potentially just going to take a shear and die. So this is very trust based. So it'll completely depend on the shaman you're with, whether or not you trust them enough to make your sheer set only capped with Grace of Air Totem. I have a weak aura that like flashes up a big shiny button if my Grace of Air goes away, so I know to call for it immediately if I'm ever like out of range of it or they forget to drop it, whatever. So I'll put that weak aura in the description, but it's up to you and like your specific shaman situation if you feel comfortable basing your sheer set on a Grace of Air Totem. While we're talking about buffs and debuffs too, Scorpion Sting is awesome for this boss. If you can get one of your hunters to keep that up the entire time, that'll reduce the damage you take by quite a bit. With the extra miss rate on Illidan's auto attacks, you're going to take quite a bit less damage, also a lot less potential for burst damage, and it'll also reduce how many blocks you get, so it'll reduce the chance of him eating through all your holy shield charges, so even further reducing the chance that he could punish you for spamming holy shield. Thunderclap, you want that up the entire time too. You also want some attack power debuffs up. This is a little bit complicated. I'm gonna post in the description a really good breakdown on how boss attack power and attack power debuffs work, because it's a lot to go into and it's easier to just kind of visualize it, I think. So I'll have that in the description, but make sure boss attack power is reduced to 0 basically. That's really helpful. For his Flame Crash ability, it actually does damage quite a bit further than the animation leads you to believe. So it does damage maybe 2 or 3 yards past what the animation is, so make sure like the pets aren't getting hit by that. So what I do for this, I just move him like quite a bit so that the pets definitely aren't getting hit by it, because you don't want your hunter pets to die. That's a lot of lost damage, and they're pretty dumb sometimes, so they might just kill themselves. So I try to just do like a fairly big move just to make sure they aren't getting hit by the Flame Crash. And he's only really gonna Flame Crash like a couple times usually per phase that he's able to Flame Crash in, so it's really not too big of a deal. But as you're doing those moves, if you are going the Grace of Air Totem route, then you do have to be careful that you are still in range of that Grace of Air Totem when you're moving for those Flame Crashes. For threat resets, he's gonna reset threat when he transitions from phase 2 to phase 3, so be ready for that. When he like comes down but he hasn't quite like engaged you yet, make sure you have like Holy Shield up, Consecration down, and just be spamming Exorcism to try to get that snap threat as quick as possible, and you should be totally good there. Getting threat back, you can get a misdirection from a hunter too. A lot of guilds are doing the demon phase skip strat, so this is something my guild's doing, and there's a couple ways this can happen. So the way it's been happening for my guild is basically we get him pretty close to 30%, and then he starts doing his RP where he like goes on the ground and starts turning into a demon. During that time he's not attacking and you can still damage him. So at this point my guild doesn't have enough damage to get him to 30% before he does that, so we DPS him through that RP phase, but he is going to turn into a demon briefly, and sometimes he won't do anything. He'll just become a demon and then RP back into Illidan again, and you can just DPS him the entire time through that. But there is going to be a threat reset there, so it's really important for you as the tank to be DPSing him during that time. So you have threat, your DPS may need to watch their threat during that time. So that's what he does sometimes, but then other times he may do a melee attack and or cast a bolt at you. So the melee attack's just gonna like one-shot you. So when he's about to go demon, like when his RP is almost finished and he's about to go demon, I would just use Divine Shield at that time, and that way you aren't gonna take a melee hit or a bolt. And as soon as he like does that, then he should RP and transition back into his normal Night Elf form again. So during that time, just make sure you're threading him super hard, and you should have great threat for the next phase. As soon as he finishes that whole like weird RP sequence, he's gonna do a new RP sequence that like transitions you into phase 5, the final phase, and by that point you should have plenty of threat on him and he'll get on you. Maiev will come. You need to watch for when she blinks. She's gonna blink somewhere and then she's gonna drop a trap at that location. So it's really good to just mark her so that you can easily follow where she's at. And you can potentially like not even take her to a trap. It kind of depends. So if you did the like demon phase skip, but he went through like all the RP stuff, you probably got a lot of extra damage in. So he may be starting phase 5 at like 22-23%. So if all your DPS just burn super hard, he may not enrage till he's like, you know, 5% or less, something like that. So you might just be able to just sit there and chill and just kill him right there without even going to a trap. But depending on his HP, if his HP is a bit higher, then I'd definitely just take him to a trap, especially if it's close. If it's super far, it might not be a great idea, but if his HP is higher though, take him to a trap. And the traps are super finicky. I haven't found like the most reliable way yet to get him in them, but just kind of drag him over them and hope he actually gets trapped. I've definitely had him like right on top of it multiple times and he doesn't get trapped, but honestly at this point you can probably just tank him through the enrage, especially if you have like a Holy Pally improved lay on hands you. That'll give you so much extra armor that the enrage won't even really matter at all. So during the enrage, also just pop like any defensives you have. So like if you're using Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch, Scarab of Displacement, pop those. That'll give you a really high chance of not even being hit. And then also pop like Nightmare Seed. I would just like not even wait till you get low, just like literally as soon as he enrages, just use it, because he'll die or his enrage will wear off within 30 seconds of the Nightmare Seed. So it's nice to just have that extra HP cushion so you can't get bursted. So that's pretty much everything. Let me know if you guys have figured anything out that works better than the stuff I'm doing. I'm always looking to improve this stuff. None of it's ever finished, always trying to optimize every single week, trying to get better and better. I know a lot of you guys are too, and when we share information, that's how we all get better. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys have any thoughts on like different strats or how any of my strats are working out for you. And I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.